Hey guys, welcome to lesson 42 for array lists. So these are going to implement some of those lists that we learned in lesson 41. Everything that we learned in lessons 18 and 19 can also be applied to array lists, but with different methods. So there are some advantages and disadvantages to using array lists. So you remember when we created arrays, we would always set up an actual size for the array. We'd say that we create like 1,000 spots in the array, even if we were only going to use like 10 spots, just to be sure we had enough. So really, it's a huge waste of space if we're trying to make an array. So the nice thing about using ArrayList is that instead of being static and only one location or only a set number of spots, array lists are dynamic and they can adjust and make as many spots as you need and no more. So it starts off very small, and then the more things you add to it, it grows and adapts with each thing added. Array lists also provide iterators that we briefly talked about in the last lesson. Okay, so talking about some of the disadvantages to it is that it can only store objects, meaning that you'll have to use a wrapper class to send it anything that's not an object already. They also don't return as the same object that you sent them. So if you have like a double object, it would come back as an object type object. So that's from like the cosmic superclass. So the object type object is what will be returned to you. So even though you sent it to double, it's now an object. Now you may be asking yourself, what can we use? So all those methods that we learned from the list interfaces, we're able to use those. So here we have set up an array list object that's an array list and started a new one. So what we're going to look up is some type parameters. So what we're able to do is we're going to be able to create an array list by implementing strings. So if we look at this example to set up an array list, so it sets up the array list object and we're going to call it array list. So what it does here is it says array list and then it puts string in brackets. And then we have array list and this is new array list and the string is again there in brackets. So what this does is it permits this type to only store strings in it. So instead of doing all of that object type object stuff, we can force it to be a string. So whatever type of object you have stored here is the only type you can have as part of your array list. And these have to match. So if this is string, this also has to be string. If this was int, this would have to also be int. So now this array list has been filled with strings, but once it's been converted into the array list, it's now filled with object type objects. So now what you'll have to do is if you retrieve anything from this array list, you'll have to cast it to retrieve it. So now we're going to talk through some of these examples. So what we've done is created list type object, and in that list it can only contain integers. So if we wanted to add 13 to our list, what we would do is do ArrayList.add 13. So that's all we have to do. We just have to send it that object. Now if the signature was to send it the index and the object, then it would find the index in the array list and put that object in there. Okay, since up here, remember we used the type parameters, we're able to say that if we get 3, which is whatever's at index 3, not the number 3, but whatever's at index 3, we can just store that straight as a primitive int because we had it set as a type parameter. So that makes our life a lot easier. We didn't have to cast it or anything. We just saved it straight as an int. Now, because we use that type up here, it's actually not just going to come back as a primitive, it's going to come back as a wrapper class integer, but store it as a regular old primitive int. It's called auto unboxing. You can even remove things either from an index or remove the last item. You can change objects, you can test to see if they're empty. You can actually say what the size is. So there's lots of things that you can do with ArrayList. For your project for this one, you're going to need to use the bank account class you already have, or you can use the one presented here for you. And then you're going to have a tester class that's already been created right here, but you're going to change some things to it. So you're going to instantiate the ArrayList, which the book has already shown you. You're going to create a bank account object, and you're going to add it to the ArrayList object. You're going to check and get the first account in the list, and then you're going to use some logic to determine which one has which object has the largest balance and print the answer. You also have some questions for this one. Good luck. Let me know if you have any questions.